Let's get right to it. The president offered his first State of the Union address on Tuesday. In it, the president called on Congress to set aside politics and overhaul the nation's immigration system. Trump outlined what he called an American First immigration plan. The 4 pillars include a path to citizenship for nearly 2 million young immigrants who came to the U.S. illegally, $25 billion for border security and his promised southern border wall, the end of the visa lottery program, moving to merit-based immigration, and an end to the so-called chain migration of extended family of immigrants. President Trump said it was time to replace outdated rules and bring America's immigration system into the 21st century.
These 4 pillars represent a down-the-middle compromise and one that will create a safe, modern, and lawful immigration system. For over 30 years, Washington has tried and failed to solve this problem. This Congress can be the one that finally makes it happen. Most importantly, these 4 pillars will produce legislation that fulfills my ironclad pledge to sign a bill that puts America first.
Democrats were none too receptive to his bipartisan overtures. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi said Trump is holding DACA-protected immigrants hostage. She called the president's plan the most extreme anti-immigrant agenda in generations. Here to analyze all of this, I'm joined by White House Director of Strategic Communications, Mercedes Schlapp, and she joins us from the White House. Mercedes, thanks for being here. The president delivered a full-throated endorsement of his administration's first year in his State of the Union address the other night, even calling for common ground with Democrats. Listen.
Tonight, I call upon all of us to set aside our differences, to seek out common ground, and to summon the unity we need to deliver for the people. This is really the key. These are the people we were elected to serve. So let's begin tonight by recognizing that the state of our union is strong because our people are strong.
It was a very different tone from the president, Mercedes. What did the White House hope to achieve with this speech, and did the president accomplish it?
Well, the speech, it was an incredibly powerful message from President Trump. And he was speaking directly to the American people, talking about the need to unify our country, talking about the need of what we need to build, which is that of a strong nation, a safe nation, as well as talking about the American family, that we're all in this together. He also wanted to remind Americans that it's their turn. It's their turn to live the American dream, and that the president is working day in and day out to build a strong economic foundation, a strong cultural foundation for our families so that they're able to be lifted up and have expanded economic opportunities to be able to succeed and even have extra money in their pocket to be able to help their own families.
Well, Mercedes, not everyone was persuaded by the president's attempt at outreach. Indeed, Nancy Pelosi derided that money people are getting in their pockets as crumbs. And then she went on to say this.
It was a very transformative speech for some of us last night, because while our expectations for greatness and vision of the president are not high, he stooped to a new low in terms of how he dealt with issues. For example, the immigration issue and what it has meant to our country and how he characterized.
Your reaction to that? She was not happy, and it doesn't seem as if she's moved to partisanship.
Well, I think it just sounds like that it just sounds as if the Democrats are turning their backs on the American people. I mean, clearly, the president's speech was filled with issue-based topics that were bipartisan. I mean, you talk about infrastructure, you talk about immigration reform, you talk about a booming economy. That is something that all Americans partake in. And the fact is that the Democrats still are holding a grudge against this president because he won the election and because he's being successful at his job. And so it's very unfortunate that the Democrats are thinking along the lines of, well, let's take away the American families tax cut, which, as we know, what the president is providing is that of paycheck increases. You've had over 3 million workers who have received bonuses or raises. You've had over 250 companies basically, again, providing bonuses or raises to their employees. I mean, it is a powerful time in our economy where there is hope, job creation, wage increase, which is that of benefiting the growth of America. And as we know, economic security in America means national security. So it is a fact of where America is today is that we're in a much stronger position today than we were before President Trump took office.
Mercedes, the president touted that economic explosion, particularly the low unemployment numbers, especially among African Americans and Hispanic Americans. These are the lowest really that they've seen since they've begun tracking them. Still, Congresswoman Maxine Waters offered her rebuttal of the State of the Union on BET the other night, and she had this to say.
He attempts to take credit for economic growth, but refuses to acknowledge that he inherited our nation's thriving economy from our nation's first black president. Under President Obama, the unemployment rate fell from 10% to 4.8%, and the African American unemployment rate fell 9 percentage points. Trump often works to convince dissatisfied elements in our society that all of their problems are caused by people of color.
Mercedes, your reaction?
Well, I mean, clearly what we have seen of this benefit of our economy and the fact that it was President Trump who created the 2 million jobs that we have seen. It's President Trump that we know has created this $8 trillion of wealth that has benefited in the stock market. I mean, these are numbers that are clearly linked to President Trump. The other thing is with President Trump is that in his tax cut law, there's these opportunity zones which provide investments for distressed communities, which means it goes straight into the communities where there's African Americans and Hispanics. The president's also working, especially this year, to invest in workforce development, in vocational training, in helping to lift Americans, all Americans, out of poverty. What we saw under President Obama was a cycle of poverty where there was increased poverty, there was individuals, a record number of individuals on food stamps, and the reality is that it's truly under President Trump that we have seen the enormous economic growth under his time and not under President Obama's time.
Mercedes, one of the centerpieces of the president's speech was his reference to illegal immigration and the so-called dreamers. He also laid out his immigration plan, as we talked about earlier. Watch this.
I am extending an open hand to work with members of both parties, Democrats and Republicans, to protect our citizens of every background, color, religion, and creed. My duty, and the sacred duty of every elected official in this chamber, is to defend Americans, to protect their safety, their families, their communities, and their right to the American dream. Because Americans are dreamers too.
Americans are dreamers too. He also highlighted parents of children slain by that MS-13 gang. Democrats say the president is demonizing immigrants. Is he?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, this president knows that this is a nation of immigrants. Obviously, we want legal immigration, but the legal immigration that we want, that is being proposed, is that of a merit-based system. Those would be legal immigrants coming in based on skills and the fact of being able to contribute to our economy. This is how many countries do this in Australia, Canada, New Zealand. It is the right approach in dealing with legal immigration. The problem has become is that for decades we have ignored the crisis on the border, the fact that you've had border crossing apprehensions increase, the fact that you have illegal immigrants who have come through the border, many of them MS-13 gang members who are now infiltrating communities. And guess the communities that are impacted are actually many Latino communities, many African American communities. And we saw this obviously with one of the guests, the families that were there of the victims of MS-13 gang violence. And the reality is that we need to be able to close the loopholes in order to protect our homeland, in order to modernize and provide a safe immigration system.
Mercedes, before the speech was even delivered, the U.S. Catholic bishops issued a statement in response to the president's immigration reform plan. They said, and I'll put it on the screen, "We welcome the administration's proposal to include a path to citizenship for Dreamers. However, the proposed cuts to family immigration and elimination of protections to unaccompanied children are deeply troubling. Family immigration is part of the bedrock of our country and our church." And then they went on to quote Pope Francis. Why is chain migration such a centerpiece of the president's plan? And what's the danger here? They say this is family immigration.
Right, and when we're talking about ending chain migration, we are protecting the nuclear family, and that is spouses and minor children who will be able to come through a legal process. The problem becomes when it's all the extended individuals, because what happens is that it's no longer based on skills that we need to match up our economic needs. It's simply that of just family relationships. And so what happens is you end up creating a cycle of where you have just 1 in 15 of these immigrants coming into our country with the right skill base. And so we have to remember that part of this is ensuring that we do protect the nuclear family, that we do find a permanent solution to DACA, but at the same time that we have the merit-based system, which we know is applied in many countries and could really help and boost our economy while at the same time protecting the American worker. With that being said, this President's immigration framework is nearly 7 in 10 Americans agree with how the president has laid out this framework. It's very mainstream. It's a generous compromise. We believe we can get bipartisan support on this framework. And I have to say, I have been through this before where it's been decades where this issue has not been solved. We need to find a way where we secure our border, where we have our ICE agents and our Border Patrol agents empowered and have the resources they need to deal with the crisis on the border, and at the same time, a compassionate solution given to DACA recipients, that of 1.8 million DACA recipients who would receive legal status and a pathway to citizenship.
Mercedes, tell me about this FISA memo. I want to shift gears for a moment here. There's a lot of talk about whether the president will release this. Now, this is a memo that was drawn up by the House Intelligence Committee, the Republicans who are in the majority on that committee. It's kind of their version of events of what led to the surveillance of the Trump campaign, the FISA request to put in to secure that surveillance. Why is this such a big deal, and why is it taking so long to release it?
Well, there's a review process in place. Obviously, the president is receiving input from a wide range of stakeholders, including intelligence officials, the legal team. And so at this point, we're still in the review process. No decision has been made. But as the president has stated before, this is a matter of full transparency. The president has been concerned of the abuses of FISA and the civil rights infringement on our law-abiding citizens. And at the same time, the president expects full disclosure. So at this point, we're in the reviewing process. The president has read the memo, and at this point, we have no further announcement to make.
Mercedes, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, asked for some minor edits before that memo should be released to the public. Apparently those edits were made. Now Christopher Wray is saying, well, they don't have enough information in the memo, so it shouldn't be released. Your thoughts?
You know, I haven't seen the memo. Again, I'll say that it's going through its review process. Obviously, the president and his team is engaging the legal team and the intelligence officials. At this point, they're again looking through the process, and you know, the decision will be made when it will be made. It is a congressional document, so at the end of the day, it would be the House who would be releasing it. And at this point, we're still in the review stages.
Final question: Congressman Trey Gowdy, a major figure in the GOP, also the chairman of the Appropriations Committee this week, both announcing they are stepping down, retiring, and will not seek re-election. 34 congressional Republicans have announced retirement so far. Are you worried that the GOP could lose the majority in the midterms?
Look, midterm elections, it's always a competitive time, but I will tell you that based on the president's record, based on the work that the Republican Party is doing right now in terms of the huge success they've had from an economic standpoint, from the energy that we're feeling right now on the ground. I think the Republicans are going to be in strong shape. We have a great economic story to tell to the American people. I can tell you the president and the GOP, they're fighting for the American people. They care. They want to make a difference. They want results. And the reality is that the only ones who have obstructed this process are the Democrats. I'm still in shock that the Democrats refuse to even stand up or applaud, so many of them, when the president spoke about unifying the country and just very simple kitchen table bipartisan issues. And yet their only answer to this is not a solution, not an agenda, but simply to just obstruct and not move the ball forward for the American people. I think that is incredibly disappointing, and I think that at the end of the day, the American people will realize that it's the Republican Party and the president who are committed to moving forward important agenda items like infrastructure, like workforce development, as well as immigration reform, and they've just become more the party of the worker and the party of mainstream America.
Very good, Mercedes Schlapp. Thank you for joining us and for the time, and we will check in again with you soon.
Thank you.